Deep beneath the Celtic Sea, Ireland is laying a single cable that will cost €1.6 billion. It's called the Celtic Interconnector, and it's one of the most consequential energy decisions the country has made in decades. This 575-kilometre undersea link will directly connect Ireland to France's electricity grid for the first time, breaking Ireland's near-total reliance on the UK and reshaping how power flows across Western Europe. In this video, we'll explain why Ireland's grid has become increasingly fragile, how Brexit and wind power exposed its limits, and why access to France's nuclear-heavy system could change energy prices, security and stability for decades to come. Before we connect the cables beneath the sea, make sure to plug in and subscribe to Design Zip for clear, no-nonsense stories about the infrastructure shaping the modern world. Ireland's power system has had a quiet problem for a long time. It's an island grid with very few ways to move electricity in or out. Until now, all of Ireland's electricity interconnectors have connected through the UK. That means Irish power prices, backup supply and grid stability depend heavily on one neighbour. Before Brexit, that dependence didn't raise many alarms. After Brexit, it did. Electricity trading rules changed. Market access became more uncertain. And it is since then that Ireland's energy security has started to feel fragile. At the same time, Ireland's energy system itself started changing fast. Wind power now supplies a large share of the country's electricity, often more than 30% across the year, and much more on very windy days. Ireland sits right on the Atlantic where the wind is strong and constant. That's a huge advantage, but it also creates a problem. When the wind is strong, Ireland can generate more electricity than it needs. When the wind drops, especially during cold winter evenings, supply tightens quickly. Without strong connections to other grids, extra wind power gets wasted, and shortages are filled by expensive gas generation. That pushes prices up and makes the system harder to manage. Energy isolation also affects the economy. Ireland hosts energy-hungry industries, including large data centres, which already use a significant share of national electricity demand. In fact, latest figures show that data centres now consume a staggering 22% of Ireland's total electricity. To put that in perspective, these server farms now use more power than every urban home in the country combined. Companies investing billions look closely at grid resilience and backup options. A system with limited interconnection looks risky, especially as Europe moves toward more renewable energy, which is naturally less predictable. That's why, in 2016, Ireland and France began serious talks about a direct electricity link, and why planning sped up after 2019 as Brexit risks became clearer. In July 2016, after a full feasibility study, both countries agreed to move forward. Over the next few years, the project went through environmental studies, route planning, and cost analysis. In 2018, marine surveys were approved along the Cork coast, and the project received early backing from the European Investment Bank as part of Ireland's Brexit preparation. By 2019, it was officially labelled a European project of common interest, meaning Brussels saw it as strategically important for the entire EU grid. That plan became the Celtic Interconnector. It's a 700-megawatt high-voltage direct current cable running about 575 kilometres from Knockgraha in County Cork to La Matire in Brittany. Around 500 kilometres of that route sits on the seabed of the Celtic Sea, crossing Irish, British and French waters. HVDC technology was chosen because it loses far less power over long distances. Specifically, this cable uses voltage source converters, VSC, which allow for black start capability, meaning France could literally jumpstart the Irish grid if it ever suffered a total collapse. Alongside electricity, the project also includes a direct fibre optic link between Ireland and France, adding digital connectivity under the sea. Costs grew as the scale became clear. Early estimates in 2016 put the project at about €1 billion. By November 2022, the expected cost had risen to around €1.6 billion due to inflation, higher material prices, and the complexity of undersea construction. In December 2020, Ireland and France secured €520 million in EU funding, one of the largest energy infrastructure grants either country has received. Final construction and finance agreements were signed in Paris in November 2022. Getting permission took years. Ireland approved the onshore section in May 2022. The foreshore licence for subsea works followed in August. The final approval came in September 2022, when the UK cleared the route through its waters. Undersea cable laying finally began in August 2025. While the project was once expected to be ready by 2026, the timeline has now shifted, with commissioning expected in spring 2028. On the French side, construction of the La Martyre converter station began in October 2023 and is scheduled to finish in 2026. On the Irish side, Knockgraha will handle the conversion between Ireland's grid and the new HVDC system. Power will flow both ways. For Europe, this cable adds strength to a system under pressure from climate targets and energy shocks. For Ireland, it ends decades of limited electrical isolation. Once the cable is live beneath the Celtic Sea, Ireland won't just generate energy at the edge of Europe anymore, it will be connected right into the heart of the grid. Europe's electricity system is under pressure from several directions at once, and that's exactly why the Celtic Interconnector matters far beyond Ireland. Across the EU, electricity demand is rising while the way power is produced is changing fast. Coal is being phased out, gas prices remain volatile, and renewable energy is expanding unevenly across regions. Some countries generate huge surpluses at certain times, others face shortfalls. Without strong physical links between national grids, that imbalance turns into price spikes, wasted clean energy, and higher risk during supply shocks. This is where interconnectors become essential. The EU has long pushed for member states to connect at least 15% of their installed electricity capacity to neighbouring countries. That target exists for a reason. When grids are linked, electricity can move to where it's needed most, instead of being trapped inside national borders. This link fits directly into that strategy. It connects a renewable-heavy system on Europe's western edge with one of the most stable electricity systems on the continent. France plays a key role here. Its electricity mix is dominated by nuclear power, which provides steady, predictable output regardless of weather. Ireland, by contrast, has some of Europe's strongest Atlantic wind resources, where generation can surge far beyond domestic demand on windy days. Without export routes, that surplus is curtailed. With this connection, it can flow directly into the wider European grid. This two-way balance is exactly what Europe needs more of. When wind output drops in Ireland, power can flow back from France. When demand spikes elsewhere, surplus renewable energy can move from west to east. This flexibility reduces the need for fossil fuel backup plants across the EU. It also lowers overall system costs, because electricity is sourced from the cheapest available generation rather than produced locally at any price. Europe's regulators have already started planning around this reality. In March 2024, the EU Agency for the Cooperation of Energy Regulators, ACER, formally included the Celtic Interconnector in its cross-border electricity capacity calculations. That means this cable is not just a physical asset. It is now part of how electricity prices, congestion, and power flows are managed across multiple countries. Once operational, it will directly influence wholesale electricity markets in Ireland, France, and beyond. Security is another major reason Europe needs this link. Energy security is no longer a theoretical issue. Since 2022, Europe has faced real disruptions, from gas supply cuts to infrastructure sabotage elsewhere on the continent. The lesson has been clear that the systems that rely on single routes or single partners are vulnerable. The Celtic Interconnector adds redundancy. It reduces Ireland's reliance on one external connection and gives Europe another stable pathway for power exchange at the edge of the continent. The project also strengthens Europe's long-term climate goals. The EU's energy transition depends on massive amounts of renewable electricity, but renewables only work at scale if grids can share power efficiently. Offshore wind in the Atlantic, solar in southern Europe, hydro in Scandinavia, and nuclear in France all peak at different times. Interconnectors turn those differences into strengths. Without them, each country must overbuild backup capacity. With them, Europe can operate more like a single system. For Europe, this project is about stitching the edges of the grid into something stronger and more flexible. It helps move clean energy where it's needed, stabilizes prices, and reduces the risk that local failures turn into regional crises. When it finally switches on, it will quietly reinforce how Europe keeps the lights on in a more uncertain energy future. The Celtic Interconnector is more than a €1.6 billion cable. It's Ireland's quiet break from energy isolation and a small but crucial stitch pulling Europe's fractured power system closer together. Personally, I see this as the right project at the right moment. It's expensive, slow, and politically complex. But in a world where energy security and clean power matter more every year, resilience rarely comes cheap. So what do you think? Is this a necessary investment in Europe's shared future, or an over-engineered solution to a problem that could have been solved closer to home? Let me know your thoughts. And if you're interested in the stories behind the infrastructure that shapes how our world actually works, from energy and transport to architecture and construction, Design Zip explores those projects every week. Thank you, and see you in the next one.